I actually had a very early kind of exposure to fashion. My parents are both hairdressers. Being in a salon environment, which, I was dropped off at school every day, had to spend like hours and hours kind of entertaining myself at the salon, and I saw a lot of transformation with women, and I saw how they would walk in looking one way and they would leave kind of as a different person, and they kind of possessed all this confidence and beauty. And that was such an important part, I think, in the foundation of going into fashion. Both my mother and my father always dressed beautifully. They were quite young when they had me, and they were still enjoying their life outside of being parents. And I remember just seeing that. My mother would be wearing Stephen Sprouse and Comme des Garçons. Detroit was like a really fascinating place to grow up in. It was quite a raw and heavy city. At the time, it was all about music. There was all these pockets of inspiration and art and experimentation that were happening alongside this very banal, like very Midwest upbringing. I started to see this divide. I loved how people could express themselves through clothes, and I saw that through my family. There was a lot of mystery around what fashion was or what the job was. I thought that you had to be a designer or you had to be a journalist. And those were kind of the two entry points that I saw in fashion at that time, because it was obviously pre-Instagram, pre-reality TV show competitions, pre-movies. Fashion was not as much a part of our upbringing as it is today, which is pretty shameful. I still probably can't sew a button. And being a designer was something I wasn't totally committed to, and journalism I wasn't so sure of, even though I kind of ended up going that route. So I didn't really pursue fashion. I wore it, I loved it, I fell in love with clothes and products and designers very early. That desire was like in me, but never understanding what the job could be. I didn't know what a stylist was, so I didn't go that route initially. The way that I entered the industry was a bit through accident and a lot of hard work. I left Detroit because it was quite small and there wasn't a lot going on there. I always wanted something bigger. My eyes were very wide open at an early age, and I knew there was something bigger out there. I just didn't know what it was. Left Detroit, went to Boston, went to school for 4 years, studied film, art history, wanted to be an actress, tried it all. Loved characters, loved transformation. And then when I landed here, I just took whatever job I could find, which happened to be in PR. Doing that job for the first 6 months in New York, I saw that the magazines had all the power. Okay, so how do I get into the magazine? I wanted to be in a powerful role, and I knew I needed to be at magazines, and I'd always loved magazines. So there was 2 magazines that were hiring. It was Elle and it was W, and I ended up meeting with both of them, and I talked my way into that Elle job, and I don't know how. And I was an assistant bookings editor, so I kind of entered through doing production and shoots, and this was kind of the early 2000s, and Elle was quite a fantastic place. It was very French at the time, and it was still kind of run by Gilles Ben-Simon and Carleen Cerf, so there were legends in the building for sure. I started off in production and casting, which was such an incredibly informative basis for this whole job. I mean, even today, I use a lot of production. I did not like sitting at the desk. I wasn't terribly organized. I wasn't a market person. And then the minute that I could go on set, I had this energy. I loved the way that it all came together. I saw the clothes walking by. I saw the girls who were assisting the fashion director, and I knew that was the job I wanted. I wanted to be in that department, and I did everything I could to get that job. There was an assistant position that was opening for the fashion director, Tanina Garcia, and I got the job. And that was really kind of, I think, the start of being a part of fashion and understanding what it was. A friend of mine went to the Wall Street Journal, and there was this editor, Deborah Needleman, who was there, and she was running the newspaper and the magazine. And we ended up getting along, and I was at the newspaper. I was doing nothing that had to do with styling, nothing that had to do with image making, but it was a very important skill to learn at that point, because I learned about editing and responsibility and communication in fashion because you had a bigger audience to speak to. And it was a segue because I met Deborah and I got to work at my dream magazine, which was T, a New York Times. That's how the real styling started. There was where I really honed in, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. That's where I built all my great relationships. That's where I observed and worked with some of the best stylists in the world, and they totally helped me sharpen my eye. I think it was just like a career of watching people for a very, very long time until I finally decided that it was time for me to do it myself. Navigating editorial and magazines and clients as a stylist, because I had to work in so many different kinds of publications, has been a very important skill. You have to be incredibly sympathetic, empathetic, understanding of a client's needs, a magazine's needs, and respectful of how they're running their businesses. Having those different experiences and being really adaptable and sensitive to them helps me now in my professional setting, like that I can go into a client and say, okay, well, yeah, we're really going to focus on sales and images. And if I'm working for a magazine, the magazines are structured very differently. They need to have advertiser shot. They need to have a very collaborative environment. And growing up in the magazine part of this industry, you are a team player no matter what. It's not just about you. So that, I think, is kind of the best takeaway. Everything we do now is teamwork. It's not a one-woman show. Some pivotal moments in my styling career, we all kind of look at covers and they mean a lot. It's a very strong face into the world. It shows your work and they become iconic. One of the ones that I'm most proud of was for ID. We shot Awar, who is the Canadian amazing model, sweetest, kindest, possesses such an incredible beauty. You know, the ID team is great. You know, they're very respectful to their teams. Alistair McKim, who's the editor-in-chief, is a very good friend of mine. We worked together when I was at T. He was shooting for me when I was there. This relationship has evolved. And what I love about that magazine is it really takes risks, and you see it's got a good sense of culture and intersection between culture, street, and fashion. So to be a part of the magazine is great. And, you know, they really celebrate models. So that's really what's pushing us forward, is these faces. And Awar was really taking off. We shot her, I think it was like one of the first moving images, because ID you always have to cover the eye. But Amy Truth was the photographer, and she's a good friend. And she just got this shot of this like beaded hat, and she got the eye through it, and it was just one of those moments on set. You're like, wow, think it'll be a cover? And it was, and I felt really proud of it. I loved what it communicated. The misconceptions of the industry is that it's all glamour all the time. Being a stylist is absolutely not glamorous at all. I mean, it's incredibly tiring. There's tons of travel involved, which I enjoy, because you just get to go to these far-flung places that you probably never would have. I find that to be such a privilege. It's packing, it's clothing, it's adaptability, it's problem solving, you know. Sure, there's glamour there. It's not just picking clothes and going to fashion shows and attending beautiful dinners. I mean, that is a small portion of it. But I think when you're a stylist, which is different than being a magazine editor is spoiled. That is a nice job. You get to go to all the shows and you get treated really well. You get lots of gifts. And then moving to the styling part, it's rough. You are a behind the scenes person. You're on set almost every day, or you're consulting, you're with product. Every day is different. You're dealing with different people, navigating personalities, egos, combinations of people. It's shipping, it's receiving. It's not totally glamorous. I think that's why there's not a lot of stylists, because it takes a very certain skill set to love and enjoy what you do. That's why there's not many of us, because it's hard. It's a difficult, demanding job, and you have to have the strength every day to work in that way. You have to make that choice. So much of what I love about this job is photography and what the final image is. Your role as a stylist, you're just in the photographer's image. And having that respect and that collaboration was something that I extracted from my time with Joe McKenna. I was very lucky to work with him when we were at T Magazine. He's been probably one of the most inspiring people to me, and still inspires me. You get inspiration from so many different places. Like that's the great thing about fashion. People think it's such a superficial business, but what I love about fashion is it's just a voice on culture, a voice on our time. It navigates the same things that we all go through, but more so than any other industry, more than art and design and beauty. This element of storytelling that fashion does, and you can see where culture is based on clothes. Like, it's incredible. And I still feel it's like this anthropological study. Like, where we're going and how designers are making things and what does image making look like. Fashion industry is amazing for that. If fashion's not pushing it in terms of shape and design, it's the role of the stylist and the photographer and the image makers to push beauty forward and push our idea of fashion forward. It's a little pressure. When I'm approaching a project, I generally don't pull references unless it's required. I do research heavily, but I find that in such an image congested culture and moment, we are digesting images so often that sometimes we imitate them. As much as I can, I try not to build a mood board so precisely, because I think that it's a healthier expression if I can try to create and look at something new. That even goes with consulting. It's very easy to kind of pull old swipes of an old Nicola Balenciaga sweater and saying, just make that. We can regurgitate the past and rework it, and that happens in product, it happens in image making. I find it's really good to influence yourself with art, and photography for me is the most important, because I really like to see images and how compositions can work. But if someone asks me to pull styling references, I only do it if it's required. I have to try to do things that feel naturally, and it's something that's inside of me. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm being totally true to myself. This frustrates people though, but I power through, because I often work very much in my head. And I see something and I have a vision for something, and to articulate that through somebody else's work, I think sometimes dilutes it. I sometimes surprise people with my direction. Creative partners are the most important part of this business. I went freelance pretty late, so I'm only 3 years in. So I'm still kind of building those partnerships. The photographer-stylist relationship is so incredibly important. And to build a language with somebody that you have chemistry with, that you have trust with, you push your work into a better place. And you see that with people who've had these immense, beautiful careers. They've worked with the same teams for decades. I'm in the infancy of that, but Robin is one of my most frequent collaborators. He's a friend. We both are kind of in the same stage of our career. The way that he shoots and the way that I style, it's very complementary. What kind of tone do you want on set? What do you want to feel like when you're together? Do you want it familial? Do you want to have fun with it? We should sometimes. The joy that comes from doing this work, it shouldn't be hard. So when you have those people that you trust on set, you can question each other and make mistakes in a safe place. When there's an intimidation or a dominance, it can paralyze you from being and feeling free to push your work forward. Because I think with mistakes is when newness comes. Feeling safe on set and feeling like you have a voice when something's not right, and not taking it so seriously is when your best work comes out. And you keep building. You say, oh, this shoot, let's change the light. Let's do this, girl. That dialogue is so energizing and is my favorite part. There's other people that I've been working with that I love and I trust their vision. Sam Rock is one. Anthony Seklaoui is someone that I work with frequently. He's a newer collaborator, but the trust is there, and I can really only work in that way. When I first was familiarized with self-service, I saw something that I felt was the future. It was this big, heavy book. And the way that it was bound, and the paper, and the tangibility of it, and this confidence of saying, you know what, here's a book, and all of this work inside from cover to cover is really a snapshot of where we are today. It gave the print book this value. It was a shelf. You could put it on the shelf. You didn't recycle it. You didn't throw it away. It was so curated and collectible. And I was like, you know what, but this is what we should be doing. We shouldn't be having, we don't need anything every month, This just curation of people's work where they get a free space to really push it was how I reacted to the digital transformation. It didn't wipe out print journalism, but it did put a lot more importance kind of on the print product and the risks that could be taken within that space. The positive thing about everything going more digital was that there was more work. in the freelance world because brands started to take more control over their content and editorializing their content. So instead of being structured around one big campaign every season and those assets kind of lasted for 6 months, 4 months, whatever it is, digital constantly need content. So I saw an opportunity more than I saw it to be something that was going to be detrimental to the career. I rely so much on the people that I work with, different casting agents, who help you see girls in a different way. I mean, they are so important in understanding the image, where the girl kind of helps the story go. Now I enjoy casting so much. That is a competitive race of finding kind of the best to work with. I mean, being able to work with some of these great models it changes your work, you know? Working with Raquel Zimmerman was phenomenal. Girls who can really just be so present in a picture, know how to work within the clothes, are just a part of the storytelling as you are, that's the exciting part of the job too. Advice I have for anyone kind of entering the business is that it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a long time. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time and I had to go through a lot of different obstacles to get here. Being patient and immersing yourself with as much observation and experience only leads you to sharpening your own eye, taking that next step to being your own entity. I found assisting was the best thing I could have done. I don't believe in overnight success for anybody. I think that this business is filled with people who work hard and they work long and they work well into an age that most countries would not want you to work. And it's because they love it and they're hungry for it and they navigate it in a way that is brilliant. So for anyone that thinks it's easy, they're very mistaken. But advice would be, you know, you have to start, you have to ask questions, you have to be curious, you have to be hardworking.